A very good afternoon to all the students of Class 9. Today I'm going to take on the poem, The Road Not Taken. So we briefly go through the poem, and once the poet was going through a forest and he reached a point where the path branched out in two directions. Now branched out, I would like to give you synonyms for this in case different words are used in the MCQs. Branched out, they split, they bifurcated, they divided, they diverged, they forked, okay? So, or an intersection, or he was at crossroads, okay? So all these are synonyms for the word branched out in two directions. Now both the paths looked equally attractive, and both required, somebody to wear them out, to walk on those paths. And the poet stood there for a very long time because he was contemplating, he was thinking, he was brooding, he was trying to make a decision. He seemed to be in a kind of a dilemma, a doubt, and he was puzzled which road to take. So he stood there for quite some time because he did not want his decision to be wrong. So he weighed all the pros and the cons, the advantages and the disadvantages. He weighed everything. That's why he stood there for a long time, thinking, brooding, contemplating, okay? Then the poet, he decided to take the one that was less traveled. Though in the poem it said both seemed equally fair, but still he mentions that he wanted to take the road which was less traveled. That means he just wanted to be a little different. He didn't want to go with the mainstream or do things that other people did and just followed the herd mentality kind of a thing. So he wanted to take the road which was less traveled. He wanted to try it out. He wanted to take a chance. So he stood there thinking about the choice that he was going to make. So here what we see is that the roads, they mean the choices we get in life. So through the poem, the writer, the poet has tried to bring out the aspect that in life we come across so many situations where we have to make a choice. We have to take a strong decision because there are so many major decisions to be taken in life. So at that point of time, one should think very wisely and weigh all the advantages and disadvantages and then make a decision wisely. Okay. Then years later, the poet recalls his making the choice, because once you've made a choice, now the result will only come later on, okay, after you have experienced that path, after you have experienced all the situations in life. So the result will come at the end. And with the result, you will be able to say whether you were successful or whether you were unsuccessful, So that is what it is. He says that it has made all the difference. So he consoles himself by the fact that years later, when he thought about that choice that he made long ago, and he felt that that choice had made a difference in life for him. Now here the poet means to say that the choices which one makes in one's life are made forever. Are made forever means once you've made a decision, you've taken a decision, you have to abide by that and go by that. And later on, the result will come much later, okay? And this is a decision for life. One cannot turn back and make a second choice. Therefore, it is very, very essential to make one's choices very carefully, okay? Just as he thought that, someday he'll come back and take the other path, but that was not possible. Why? Because in life, once you move ahead, you go on from one road to the other, from one path to the other path, one phase of life to the other phase of life. So there's no going back. Okay. So the yellow woods, now the yellow woods symbolize that it was autumn season, the leaves were turning yellow, okay? And the poet was going through a forest, and he reached a point where the road diverged in two directions. Now, since he was a lone traveler, he was a solitary traveler, so obviously he couldn't travel both the roads at the same time, so he had to make a choice, okay? The poet stood there in thought for a very long time, and he looked at the roads as far as his eyes could see. And he could see to the point where the road, bent behind the bushes, and it curved into the bushes, okay? Then the poet decided to take the other road. Here he says it was as good as the other one, as beautiful as the other one, as fair as the other one, and grass grew on his road. It showed that the road had not been much used, had not been traveled much upon. Now, the poet thought that this road had a better claim to be traveled by. However, in fact, both the roads seemed almost equally good. Okay, and the leaves, the path or the roads were covered with leaves, and nobody had traveled on them or trampled on them because they were as green and moist. Okay, and he thought that he'd come back to the other road, but then of course that was just a thought that came to him, but obviously he must be knowing pretty well that there was a little chance of him coming back, since every road leads to a new road. Then the poet imagines a time many ages hence, in advance, what will happen. And then he will recall to his mind how he had chosen one of the two roads which diverged in the forest. And then he will recall how he had decided to travel by the less frequented road. Less frequented road, as I told you, he wanted to be a little different. He did not want to go with the mainstream. He wanted to take the risk. He wanted to find out for himself, because a road that has been traveled by many, their experiences help you out to know whether it would be a good choice or a bad choice. But then he took that risk, and in life one does have to take chances, one does have to take a risk. But we must not be very impulsive, or we must not look at only the superfluous things around us when we are making a choice. We must be far-sighted. We must weigh the pros and cons carefully. So while making that choice, he knew that it would affect his life, not only his life, but also the course of his spirit, later on, whatever he experiences. Okay. Now, the poem is not difficult at all in that sense, but it's a very, kind of a serious message that is being conveyed to the reader. Now, here we say, since the poet stood at that point and he contemplated and he thought and seriously, so the poem is reflective, thoughtful, and so we can say that the tone of the poem is meditative. Means he meditated, he thought, and so the tone of the poem is meditative because he weighed the pros and cons, the advantages and disadvantages, okay? Very seriously, very carefully. Now, the poem has 4 stanzas with 5 lines each, which is called a quintrain, Quintrain. Now, if we look at the title says The Road Not Taken, okay? But here we know that, he did make a choice. But then the road not taken, how is that title justified? It is relevant because the poet was a sole traveler. He was a solitary traveler, so he couldn't travel both paths, of course. So one road was left out, okay? And another interpretation in poetry could be the road not taken could also mean the missed possibilities and the missed chances in life that we could not take, that we could not, avail of, okay? So that is a kind of an interpretation in poetry, that the road not taken could also mean the missed possibilities or the chances and the various intricacies of decisions, whether the decision taken was right or not right. So it was not merely picking the road that is new and exciting, but the poet was definitely in a dilemma, standing at a road with a diversion. Now the diversion symbolizes real life situations. The diversion symbolizes real life situations. Basically, the poet is not talking about roads and choosing a road. What he's trying to put across to his readers is that these are real life situations where one has to make choices. And we are driven by our hopes, we are driven by our ambitions, we are driven by circumstances, and we have to take a decision. Okay? All right. Years later, as I told you, we may regret it or we may be happy. So here the focus is on making wise decisions in life. The focus does not lie on what kind of a road it was. Okay? So this poem is basically an extended metaphor. Similes and metaphors. Okay? Similes, comparisons, when we use the word like or as in it, and metaphors are implied similes. Okay, I'll just do one example for you. He was like a lion in the battlefield. The next one we say, he was a lion in the battlefield, or like I said, he was like a lion in the battlefield. And then next sentence is, he was a lion in the battlefield. So first one is simile, it has like and as, because we are comparing him to a lion. In the next sentence, it says that we are actually saying that he was a lion. So he's not a lion, but in the comparison, we are implying that simile. Okay? And metaphors do not have like or as in it. Okay? So this poem is an extended metaphor. The road is life and it diverges, and a decision has to be made, and life changes accordingly. Okay? Now, yellow, as I said, autumn season, another interpretation could be yellow sometimes is considered as a middle color and something in between and unsure of itself. So this sets the mood of this decision making that characterizes the language of the poem. But basically we stick to the autumn season. The leaves had fallen because that's the season when trees shed their leaves. And another is the beautiful aspect. The forest looks beautiful, at this point of time. Okay. Then we come on to the question and answers. For the MCQs, let's see. As I told you in the previous video, please don't forget to learn the names of the poets and the authors, okay? So the poem, as we know, is written by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged mean A, choices one gets in life, B, normal roads the poet saw, C, the people one meets in their life, D, the poor condition of roads. So the correct choice will be choices one gets in life. That's A. Now the poet is just one person. Okay. So that is why he could not travel both the roads. Because one traveler, it's not possible to travel on both the roads at the same time. Why did the poet take so long? Waiting for someone to help, A. B, the poet had to make a decision according to his astrological assumption. C, he could not come back and change his opinion. D, the poet had already walked on one path and he did not want to repeat his mistake. So the choice will be C, he could not come back and change his option. That is why he waited there so long to make the correct choice. So just if you see a word decision in a sentence doesn't mean that you have to immediately tick mark. Like B says, the poet had to make a decision according to his astrological assumption. So we are not talking about astrology or any assumption. So please don't make that mistake. Read the sentences carefully. Next question. Meaning of undergrowth. Dense growth of plants and bushes. Thin growth of plants and bushes. Light growth of plants and bushes. Or sparse growth of plants and bushes. So here we know it was a dense growth of plants and bushes. Okay. And next question. What is the rhyme scheme of the poem? The rhyme scheme is A-B, A-A-B. A-B, A-A-B. What is the correct meaning of diverged? It divides, it bifurcates, it separates. And D is all of the above. So all are same in meaning, so we will have D, all of the above. That is why if you come across any difficult word, please look up the synonyms, please, so that you don't mark the incorrect choice. Next question. Then took the other part, which was equally good or as fair as it's given in the poem. What does that mean? The path looked better than the other. They both looked equally good. They were just equally good. The path looked better than the other. Then none of the above, or the path was beautiful. So which one do we have? Equally good. What does the line mean? And having perhaps the better claim. Better for him, easy for him, had no choice, no option. D, he wanted to walk on it anyway. So what it was? Better for him. That is what he had decided on. Okay. What was the correct reason to choose? A, the other path wanted where. B, the other path was grassy. C, had not been used at all. Or D, all of the above. So what was the correct reason to choose? It had not been used or wanted where. All of the above. So it will be D, all of the above, because the other path was also grassy. The other path also wanted where. The other path had also not been used. So all of the above. Both the paths were similar that, and there's a dash. And the choices are in the afternoon, in the evening, at night, in the morning. So when was it? It was in the morning. So you tick mark morning. What did the poet see that morning when he was looking at the roads? A, many people had stepped on it. B, no one had stepped on it. C, some people had stepped on it. D, both the paths were not same. So that day in the morning, when he stood there, he noticed that both the paths wanted where. Nobody had walked on both of them. So when you know that, so immediately you mark, no one had stepped on it then. Okay. Next question. Which is not correct? Please, not. Wherever there is not correct or whatever, please read the question carefully. Which is not correct? One path leads to another. Yes, that's true, because we cannot go back. I will walk on it some other day. He had said yes. Poet was in doubt whether he will ever be able to come back. Yes, he knew, he was doubtful. D, poet was sure he would come back. So which one is not correct? The poet was sure that he would come back. Because no, he knew in heart of hearts that he would never be able to come back. Okay. Poetic Device and Sorry I Could Not Travel both. Okay, so onomatopoeia, then synecdoche, anaphora, and simile. Now here, children, anaphora, I want to tell you that if you go look at your poem, the first stanza, you have two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could. So what is anaphora? When each line is beginning with the same word, okay, that word has been repeated at the beginning of each line, that figure of speech is called anaphora. Here in 3 lines, and has been used. I'm talking about the first stanza, okay? So whenever the first words are repeated in each line, please remember that is anaphora. What does ages hence mean? It means as he will grow old, or it means therefore, I mean kind of some reason he wants to give, or it means in the future, or it's so. So, I mean another reason. So we know ages hence means in the future. Okay, if you look at the word wanted where, give the figure of speech in these 2 words, wanted where, and the choices are allusion, onomatopoeia, then repetition and alliteration. Now what is allusion? I'll just do it side by side. Allusion is reference. You know, when there's a reference, like supposing there's some story or some link, like supposing it's some little thing has been taken from the Bible, then we say it's a biblical allusion, a biblical reference from the Bible. Or if it's from some history, then we say it's a historical allusion, historical reference, okay? Onomatopoeia is used for sound. If there are any sounds like the bees buzzed or the birds chirped, or when there's some kind of sound that is given, the, like any sound like the water gurgling or whatever, any kind of sound made which is used poetically, that is called onomatopoeia. Okay, repetition is when the word is repeated again and again. That is in between anywhere. Okay, then alliteration is a repetition of the first letter of the word. Okay, now wanted where, W wanted, W where. So that is an alliteration. Okay. Next line. Somewhere in the last stanza that you have, it says somewhere ages and ages hence. Now here again we have the literary devices or the figures of speech, anaphora, then we have repetition, we have metaphor, we have simile. Anaphora, it's not there because it's not the beginning of, it's not the beginning letter of the word, okay? Then anaphora is ruled out. Metaphor it is not because it's not being compared or contrasted to anything. Simile is also not there because there's no like and as. So the word that is left is repetition. You can see somewhere ages and ages hence. So ages has been repeated. Excuse me. Okay. Which quality of the poet would you choose from these options? Timid, cautious, coward, risk taker. Which one would you choose? He was not timid at all because he wanted to take the road less traveled. That means he was bold. He was not timid. Cautious, yes, he did think a lot. Take a long time to take a decision. Yes, he didn't want to take a wrong decision. Was he a coward? No. Was he a risk taker? Yes, because he took a chance, okay? He wanted to take the road less traveled. He did not want to go with the mainstream. So he was adventurous. He wanted to take that risk. So he's a risk taker. Next question. Road in the poem means A, road of the forest, B, road of dilemmas, C, road of life, D, a road of memories. So road in the poem is the road of life, okay? And it's here when life goes on, it's the road of life, and we have to take major decisions, and we must take them wisely. Okay. Next question. The poet took so long. Why? Number one, because he just wanted to waste time. Number two, he was admiring the scenic beauty around. C, he was exhausted. D, it was an important decision of his life. So which one would you choose? Important decision of his life. Okay. What did he think about both the paths? Okay. When he kept looking at them, both were diverging, both were promising, one was better than the other, and both looked different. So which answer would you choose? They were diverging, of course, but both were promising. They were equally fair, equally good. Okay. What is the message that is conveyed in the poem? The message that is conveyed is that we cannot go back to change the path. So whenever we make a decision, we must make it wisely, okay? So if you have choices like can't go back, then once decision is made, cannot be changed, one must take decision wisely, and D says all of the above, so you will choose all of the above. Now one-liners I'll do with you. They're helpful in your MCQs. Where does the traveler find himself? He finds himself at a place in a forest where the roads diverged in two different directions. What problem did the poet face? He couldn't decide which way to take or which way to go by. Okay. What does a yellow wood mean? A yellow wood means a forest where the leaves or the foliage, F-O-L-I-A-G-E, had turned yellow because of the autumn season. What does it was grassy and wanted wear? It means that the road was overgrown, there was grass growing, overgrown with grass, and it had not been used, it had not been walked upon. Third, the passing there. What does the passing there mean? It means the people passing that way. Next one, what does in leaves no step had trodden black? This means that no one had yet used those two roads that morning, and leaves were lying on the path, on the road, and they had not been trodden black. Next one, what does how way leads on to way mean? Okay, how way leads on to way means that every way leads on to some other way, and so there is very little possibility of one's coming back to the same way or to the same point again. Okay. Is there any difference between the two roads as the poet describes them in stanzas 2 and 3 and in the last two lines of the poem? Now in stanzas 2 and 3, both the roads have been shown to be equally fair. In stanzas 2 and 3, both the roads have been shown to be equally fair. But in the last two lines, one road has been said to be less traveled by, okay, in the last two lines of the poem, that it was the road less traveled by, less frequented. So he wanted to be different. What do you think the last two lines of the poem mean? Looking back, does the poet regret his choice or accept it? Now the last two lines show the importance of making a choice in one's life. The poet had taken a path that was rather unused so far, less traveled by, and that had made all the difference for him. And the word sigh over here says that with a sigh he says it. Now, there's a little ambiguity. It could be a sigh of relief that he was, successful, or it could be regret, a sigh of regret also. So, interpretations can be there, Okay. Now we come on to the next question. What is the best thing that you can actually do once you've made a choice? The thing is that you accept it and you work on it and you move on, okay? I mean, once the choice has been made, you can't do anything about it, but the best thing is to carry on with it, or try to, accept it and then move on and make changes later on, okay? Why was the poet puzzled? The poet was puzzled because he was not able to make up his mind, or he was not able to decide which way to go by, so he was puzzled. Okay. What do you think is the central idea of the poem, The Road Not Taken? The poet brings out the importance of making the right choice in life, right choices in life. The correct choice can make one's future, but if you make a wrong choice, it can mar your future. A choice once made can hardly be reversed later, okay? So once he had to choose between the two roads, he chose the one that was less traveled, and that, he says, has made all the difference. Okay. Which point of similarity did the poet notice between the two roads? He noticed that the two roads were fair almost equally. Okay. What was the point of difference? One road had been used less than the other. That we come to know in the last two lines of the poem. Which road, according to the poet, had better claim, and why? The grassy road had the better claim because it had been used less, and he wanted to take that risk, he wanted to take that chance, so he made that choice. Do you think the grassy road had never been used before? It had been used, of course, but not as much as the other one. Next question. What were the two roads covered with? The two roads were covered with leaves because it was the autumn season and it was a forest, so they had shed their leaves. So it was covered with leaves. What did the poet keep for another day? He kept the first road for another day. What did the poet doubt and why? Okay. The poet very well knew in his heart of heart that one road always leads to another road, and that he would never be able to come back to take the first road. Okay. Which word in the passage means crushed or trampled? Crushed or trampled. So the word is trodden. Trodden. What would the poet be telling with a sigh? He would be telling how he had taken one of the two diverging roads in a wood and how it had made all the difference. Where did the two roads diverge? They diverged in a wood. Okay. Which word in the passage means went into different directions? So the word is diverged. And please remember all the synonyms: diverged, bifurcated, divided, split, intersection, okay, crossroads. So please remember all the synonyms. So I think, and please remember, the poem is an extended metaphor and the tone of the poem is meditative. So I think most of it I have covered. If there are any doubts, you can please write down in the comment section. Okay. Thank you so much for listening, watching. God bless you all.